Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. There's been a break in the case in the Brown University shootings. There is supposed to be a press conference happening live any minute. I'm waiting for it to happen. We're paying attention to both the screens. There is a possibility that authorities may have identified, and I say may have identified, the person of interest, this person, who everyone is talking about as if he is the shooter. Um, as soon as the authorities come on the air with this live press conference, we will surely, we're here, we're ready to go. Um, this is an unexpected break in the case. Um, I was following it. In addition, there is some information that there's a possibility that the case of the professor who was shot in Massachusetts could be linked to the shooter from Brown University. This is all happening so quickly. I'm going to play a little clip from News Nation in regards to that. Um, the MIT professor, there is a possibility that the Brown shooter is involved in that also. So let me play this little snippet from News Nation.
Right out to us here at News Nation. Local outlets are now reporting police are investigating possible ties between Monday's fatal shooting of an MIT professor that happened at his home in Brookline, Massachusetts. A possible connection with this weekend shooting at Brown. Now, Brookline is only about 50 miles away from Providence, straight up I-95, less than an hour on the weekend. You could get there pretty quickly. If you're not going during rush hour. The FBI initially said there was not a link. What is your reaction to this new reporting that there may be a possible link?
Well, if there is an actual link to this, it's going to be connected to the DNA left at the crime scene in Brown, and you have a specific caliber of ammunition used, perhaps if it was the same weapon, and so there could be that connectivity. I mean, there are license plate readers or LPRs all along highway systems. So there could be connectivity between the LPRs, between the two universities as another connection. And then there's also, if the individual is on his cell phone at that scene, at both crime scenes, that's something that can be connected to both crime scenes. So those are three that come to the top of my head that can be connected.
All right, so we are now on day 6 of this manhunt. Do you think there is a possibility this person may never be found? If the person is not found, what do you think that means for Brown University?
They're going to find him. I don't have a doubt. It's going to take, it may take some time. As we all know, in the last, just even the last year, just looking at time frames post assassinations, some of the ones we've seen, heard of lately, it could range from a couple days to a couple weeks. And in some cases, back out in Washington State, that person was never found after killing his family. His body was found later, deceased. But so these things can range. It all depends on, the information they're getting, how quick they can get the information connected and get those leads out there and close. I don't have a doubt this individual will be captured.
So many people who hope that is the case. All right, former U.S. Marshal John Muffler.
So breaking news right now, and as they say, the old expression, when it rains, it pours. Information is coming quickly, and it is unconfirmed, but that you just heard the News Nation report that the Brookline, Massachusetts MIT professor and the Brown shooter may be connected. How they connected that, I really don't know. It could have been connected, and they're speculating right now, could have been connected through ballistics evidence. If he left spent shells behind at the scene, there's a technology called brass catcher. Could have been connected through DNA, could have been connected through license plate readers, although I don't think the Brown University person of interest that we've been calling him, I don't think they identified a car that he was in. So what we're waiting for right now, of course, is the press conference to take place. And as I have other screens, I'm checking that out to see when it actually starts. Initially, CBS News was the first to say they think that they've identified the person of interest. So either someone leaked that to them, and as we could see very quickly, the police and the government officials in Providence are calling a press conference. Mike, I don't know what you were doing. I sent you an email and I said, Mike,
Yeah.
we're going live, and here you are. Voila, you're on the air. You're a good soldier. You're a good soldier, Mike.
I tried. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it very much. This is breaking story, and I've been all over this all morning long looking for any connection, whether it's some sort of objective connection or just a suspicion that the FBI may have. But they're very, very careful when they talk about linking two separate crimes, especially in two separate states. You and I may have our experience and we think they're connected. Many people in the chat and many people online were saying there's probably a connection. But we're always looking for like that objective connection, something solid. But it does look like they are connected, and maybe that has something to do with with Hanukkah. We don't know, but yeah, there is that probability out there that these are connected. It's one person or one person that's part of a cell, a lone wolf, or maybe part of a cell, because you got several different descriptions that may not actually be very similar in the different shootings. So we'll have to see.
You know, Mike, I thought, of course, right away when I heard about the death of the MIT professor,
Yeah.
that it possibly could be connected. But the dissemination of information on this case and the messaging, as we call it, has been horrific.
Yes.
It has been absolutely horrific. And people, even the true crime community, they tend to connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, when you don't get information in the investigation that might answer some of your questions, it becomes very frustrating. And I'm not asking any police force or the FBI to release things that will compromise the investigation. But when the question is raised, could this be connected to the MIT professor? They could at least say, we're looking into that. You know,
Exactly.
but it seemed as though early on the FBI dismissed it right away as no, it's not connected. Eliza Krogan from the chat, new leaks are saying they have some guy and they're saying that the press conference is delayed and they're waiting for the arrest. Well, look,
Really?
that would be great, but I'm pretty sure right now they have someone identified. They have a name, so. We don't look, they would like nothing more than to give this press conference and say the person who we believe committed the shooting on the 13th of December at Brown University, resulting in the death of 2 students and the wounding of 9, has been arrested. He is now in custody. But we can't say that yet, you know, and I want to play a little bit of this is from CBS News. And as soon as they come live with the press conference, we're going to go right to it. This is from CBS News.
This beloved MIT professor who we just heard from our station there lived in that apartment with his family. We don't have any reason to believe at this time that it was a politically motivated attack on him. And we are waiting to hear more. Authorities have released absolutely no information about a potential motive there.
So we were just showing this surveillance video that law enforcement enhanced and released of a person of interest. Doesn't give the public a whole lot to go on. And we don't know how law enforcement made this identification. Could it be that they identified the person that was seen in close proximity that they released yesterday? Could that person have led them? Could somebody have recognized the particular clothing or the gait? But this, as far as surveillance imagery goes of a person of interest, not the most helpful to the public.
That's true, but it's painstaking work. The image quality is not that great. So what police were wanting to do is to fill in those pieces of the puzzle, because they had only the very beginning of the puzzle. They had the person of interest who they believe carried out the shooting walking in the residential neighborhood near the building, that engineering building on
What does law
MIT's
enforcement
campus.
think that person of interest was doing? Do they know?
Wearing the black mask, dressed in dark clothing, walking quickly in one clip, and walking in and out of frame in another clip. In fact, there's one clip where the individual is walking. It was like the streets come to a point and there was somebody else walking. You can see, you can't identify who it is. And the person they believe is the person of interest who carried out the attack, who they believe carried out the attack, took off running. So that was interesting, but they didn't have the connective tissue to piece together the path of flight. So they were trying to find, did he enter a vehicle? Did he enter a residence or a business? They had very little to go on. And at this point in the investigation, they do not have a slam dunk. They are looking at a potential connection. That's where we're at. And that is based on their painstaking work of collecting all this imagery that is out there, and it's terabytes of imagery. And they've been going slowly, looking at images of, are there things that look similar about these two locations? And they're looking at that.
You know, Mike, as we said during this investigation, and I want to make sure that the press conference has not yet started. It has not, from what I could see. If anyone in the chat, since I only have one other screen, if the press conference starts, just let me know and I'll go right to it because I can't see. But what we don't know how they identified, if in fact they have identified the person of interest, i.e. the shooter. We said they would identify him in a couple of ways. One would be the DNA left on the spent shells left at the scene. And the FBI is excellent at that. They would swab these, the brass, if for lack of a better word, spent shells, spent cartridges, and they would build a genealogical tree of who it could be, and build a family tree, and then figure out through that family tree who the shooter could be. The other way is, of course, ballistics evidence left on the scene, matching the gun to a potential owner of that gun. And that is potentially the way that they connected the shooting of the MIT professor with the Brown University shooting. So all of this is due to evidence, science, and excellent. You know, we've been beating up the messengers here, but behind the messengers, there are detectives doing the work. And someone came up with this either forensic hit or a fingerprint or some evidence, or that other person of interest who they showed today may have come forward and identified the shooter. So there's many, we're guessing right now. But I'm just going to go quickly to a comment in the chat. Miss Demina OG, MIT is even more highly respected by most Ivy League schools. The research that comes out of MIT is useful and practical more often than the silly grant dollars that is ridiculous study. Well, you know something, let's celebrate the work right now. If this is in fact true, that they have a person potentially under arrest at this time, which really for the families that lost loved ones in this case, and for the families who had their daughter, their son wounded in this attack, let's take a deep breath and really hope that this is true and that they got the shooter. Mike.
Yeah, you know, when you look at these two shootings, I don't like coincidences. It could be a complete coincidence. You know, when it first happened with MIT and the Brown shooting, and people could start drawing connections, but, you know, it could be a coincidence. But as a police officer, I don't like coincidences. I don't always believe that they just happen coincidentally to have a similar shooting of someone in education. I'm looking at that. And, you know, you want to draw connections, but you have to be careful. And you're right. We've criticized, I think rightly so, some of the messaging and some of the nonsense from the politicians. But behind the messengers are a bunch of people, those detectives, you know, in Brown University, and the Providence PD, they probably haven't slept a wink. And you and I know what that's like to go around the clock several times. And after like a day, you're not even sure what day it is, and you're still working. And they put together a lot of work with the tremendous technical assistance of the FBI, who's second seating them, giving them a lot of information that they could not get access to maybe for weeks. So if there is really a connection, and it's a solid one, it's an objective one, that's great. I'm satisfied with that. But there's so much technology out there. You've got the plate readers. You've got the geofencing with the phones. Like you say, you've got the ballistics. Even from the hit from the on the back of the bullet, where the primer is struck from the hammer, you can see individual firearms from that. So there's a tremendous amount of technology, and a lot of work has been going around the clock, and people don't even realize it. So we keep our fingers crossed, and we put the nonsense aside from the politicians and concentrate on just what the local PD and the FBI are doing, and they're probably doing an excellent job.
Mike, I'm not going to forget that, and it's not my position to criticize, but I will from my bully pulpit here. But there were some mistakes made here.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Something. That's the old expression. It's not what you do, when you make a mistake. It's how you come back from it. Same
Right.
thing with that old adage: if you get knocked on your ass,
Right.
you got to get back up. And they did, or it appears that they did, because right now it appears that they may have, and I'll be very careful in saying this, they may have the person of interest identified, and he may be the shooter. This is some WHAS.
Manhunt is intensifying in Providence, Rhode Island, as investigators are still looking for the suspect from last week's mass shooting at Brown University. Investigators are combing through surveillance videos they believe show the suspect. As ABC's Christiane Cordero reports, police also have a new image of a second individual they're trying to identify, who they say was seen near the person of interest.
Today, a trail of digital evidence points to who officials believe is the suspect of Saturday's mass shooting on the campus of Brown University. This man, described as stocky and roughly 5'8", is seen around 2 p.m. walking around the neighborhood near where the shooting happened just 2 hours later.
You want to focus on the body movements, the way the person moved their arms, the body posture.
And today, Providence police releasing these new images of a person they say was in close proximity to the person of interest. Police are asking for the public's help to identify the individual so they can speak with them. Officials say they have received nearly 200 actionable tips. They have not yet identified a motive. The community on and around Brown's campus, meanwhile, is shattered after the tragedy that took the lives of 2 beloved students, just as final exams and winter break were on the horizon.
I decided to move up my departure because I preferred to be with family during this anxious time.
Flowers are piling up on campus, with several of the victims still in the hospital. Campus officials are addressing security concerns raised in recent days, saying like most college campuses, most buildings here at Brown are accessible during daytime hours. A school spokesperson adds there are more than 1,200 security cameras throughout campus. Christiane Cordero, ABC News, Providence, Rhode Island.
Investigators say they'll now be moving further away from the campus as they continue to try and find more clues and more video and images of this person of interest.
So, good news, and to recap, and we don't know because we are awaiting the start of the press conference, but clearly the police have someone that they possibly may have identified. They may have identified the person of interest, this person here, who they believe to be the shooter. And we are just sort of conjecturing right now in how that may have happened. Was it the person of interest, the other person of interest? I hate that term. Yeah. This person, did he come in and did he say he identified the person of interest? Or was the person of interest identified through science, through DNA, through ballistics, or the old-fashioned way? Did someone see something and did they say something? I just want to say, folks, this show is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. So, Mike, what do you think? What is your feeling how he was identified?
I would think at this point, with a little vacuum of information, just a lot of supposition, I would think that particular gait that person had, about 5'8", 30 years old, stocky build, I would think that people probably knew that person. Very unique walk, waddle, some would say. I would think that would be the way that the most valuable tip was probably called in. Out of several hundred, I would imagine they got a name probably within about 8 to 12 hours of that being, being released to the public, maybe 24 hours. They got a hit on that, and they're going from there. Because I'm guessing, as many people have opined, that that person may have been smart enough not to have some sort of gloves on when they loaded up the rounds into the clip, and also going in and out of that building, instead of grabbing a doorknob or pushing something with their hand, like a swinging door, they may have had gloves on. So I'm thinking it was probably the tip line coming in the good old fashioned way, a tip, because somebody probably said, that looks like somebody I know.
Absolutely. Mr. Mina from the chat, when did person of interest term start? I know it's got to be some invention by a lawyer. Recover your ass from lawsuits, maybe. Well, you know something? It really doesn't cover your ass from anything, because you can call someone anything you want. But if you take them from one location to another against their will, they are under arrest. They're in custody. And, you could say, oh, he was just a person of interest. Well, why was he in handcuffs? He was a person of interest. Well, why did you remove him from his hotel room to a police facility? He was a person of interest. Then why did you speak to him for 14 hours? If someone is held against their will, they are under arrest. So no matter what you call them, that's why I don't really like that term person of interest. I believe in the term suspect. And they're so reluctant to use that term suspect because as what happened here, they called them a person of interest. They turned out not to be the suspect. So did they think it like exonerates them? Like the cardinal is going to come by and exonerate them from taking him into custody and in essence placing him under arrest? Because he wasn't under arrest. He was a person of interest. Mike, you're the attorney. What do you think?
I just think it's probably a term that some person in a police department, maybe in the press office, wanted to have a term that would describe someone who is really, the police really are interested in, but they don't want to use the term suspect. They want to maybe massage that term a little bit and not say, because once somebody is thought of as a suspect, the public automatically thinks, okay, the handcuffs are on, and it may not be. And so it could be that they're just looking for a more politically correct, more nuanced, this is a lawyer thing, right? A more nuanced way to say the exact same thing. Although the word suspect, that's probably been used for 200 years, but here we are. We got to use a different term. So we massage it a little bit and make it less strong, because you never know, we may release that person. It's probably a lawyer thing. Yeah.
Mike, I love you use these lawyerly words like massage it and all these lawyerly words and academic words. I used to have a good vocabulary till I stopped teaching, and then I'm out of academia and I go back to my street lingo,
Right.
and you lose your good vocabulary, but you're still in academia and still in the world of law. So you're still using these big words. I'm going to go back to CBS News that was talking about some of these things in regards to the investigation.
I do want to ask you, when it comes to the lack of footage that we have, do we know what the reason is behind that?
This is a good question. The engineering building, part of that building was outfitted with new technology, more cameras, but the room where the students were prepping for their final exam, the room where the shooting took place, there was not that really good camera angles, cameras that can move around and really capture the full room. And so there was no imagery, according to authorities, there was no imagery of the actual attack. So you didn't see the person fire, turn, and leave. So they were having to piece together surveillance footage from outside, not just outside the building, outside the classroom, outside the building. And that is a huge challenge. And it's like not exactly a needle in the haystack, but akin to that. And it takes time. But yeah, 6 days later, here we are. Let's see where this goes.
Let's go to Rodney Harrison now, former Suffolk County Police Commissioner and a CBS News law enforcement analyst. Is it typical that after law enforcement has an ID hit, they don't immediately share that?
So when I'm during my time frame as chief of detectives in the NYPD, there were times that we didn't get a photo out or a video out to the public right away because we didn't want the perpetrator to know that we were on to them. In this case, this situation, I don't think that's the case. I think the perpetrator knows that we're on to them, we're looking for them, and they're going to use whatever resources they can to bring them into custody. And I really have to commend the Massachusetts station, Ed. He actually provided some pretty good information that the media has such a tremendous role in solving cases like this, which is there is a video, besides the Crime Stoppers hotline, there's a video provider hotline that you can provide for law enforcement if you see somebody that fits the description as well. So the media has a major role in helping bringing people into custody. But that being said, I do have a level of disappointment. Doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency to get a still photo, a breakdown of the individual who committed this crime to the public in a little bit more of a detailed way. And, you know, Anna shared that the video footage that was collected might not have been top grade, but they could at least show a little bit more of this individual walking in as well as egressing from that engineering building. And who's to say that during that time frame, while walking in or walking out, he didn't pull down that face mask at one point, which could potentially help get out to the community what this individual looks like. Maybe somebody could pick up something very, very slight. Once again, we could talk about the Luigi Mangione and his eyebrows. This person may have a certain color eyes that are distinctive. So I would like to see a little bit more urgency. Every second counts right now. And everything from getting a travel ban out to make sure this person's not trying to jump on a plane and leave the state or leave the country to, once again, I shared this earlier, making sure the cops are not at a tactical disadvantage if they happen to come across this individual, which is, let's make this very clear, armed and dangerous.
Okay, Anna, let's go ahead and round out some of our coverage here. Just share the latest of what we know and what we're still working to confirm.
So at this point, we know that law enforcement is looking at a possible connection between the Brown shooting, the shooting that killed 2 students and injured 9 inside that engineering building, and 2 days later, a little bit more than 2 days later, the targeted assassination, it appears, of that MIT professor. So that's where we are at. We are 6 days out from the Brown shooting. This investigation has been slow going, painstaking. It took them a long time to pull together all of the surveillance video that is out there. Took them a long time. It's unclear if they know exactly which students were in that room studying, because it wasn't like a formal class where they have a roster and they took attendance. So challenging investigative environment. They're going slowly. They're going to pursue this lead, and we'll see where this takes us.
And so when do you expect that we might get another update? Do you expect we wouldn't get one until somebody might be potentially in custody for questioning?
Well, authorities there in Providence have been updating the public every evening around 5 p.m. Yesterday, it was at 4 p.m. They have been trying to provide the public. The problem is that they didn't have much to provide the public with. They didn't have the really good surveillance imagery to put out to the public.
So this is great. I mean, this is what we were asking for during this whole investigation, and explanations as to what was going on, why it was going on, when it was going on, and we haven't gotten that. And what we've been very critical about, Mike, people that have done police work, is that the worst thing about this investigation is and was the messaging, and too much politics in the messaging and not enough police work and investigative work. And it seems like they were protecting something. Were they protecting the Brown University brand at the expense of disseminating good and accurate and clear information? Or was it just incompetence, Mike?
Yeah, you got to wonder, because when you see the president of the college saying affirmatively, it's not our fault, you wonder, what are they reacting to? So nobody's going to have that come out of the press conference unless they're trying to get a message out ahead of some other message that they may feel is already getting out there or is already being talked about. When you see Mayor Smiley from Providence talking that, okay, yeah, we do have 2 dead students and 9 others who were shot, and we don't have a clue as to who this person is. They're out there somewhere, but no cause for alarm. You got to look at that like, what are you trying to get across? You're not trying to get across any sort of positive, you're trying to get off some sort of positive message about an armed and dangerous murderer afoot out in the streets of Providence, and trying to tell people, don't worry about it. What are you reacting to? There's something that you're worried about, maybe something to do with the city and the liability, maybe the brand of the city, similar to the brand of the college, the university. That was a big detriment, because you have this mixture of law enforcement and messaging, which could have been a little bit more polished, absolutely. But you also had the messaging of people who had no need and no reason to be in front of a microphone, spewing nonsense that is detracting from the investigation. It's worthless drivel, and people look at it and they get resentful about it because they want to know, the public wants to know what is going on. They don't give a damn what the mayor thinks, or what the college president thinks, or what the attorney general thinks. The people want actual useful information.
100%. And to update everyone, this individual you see on the screen who has been referred to as the person of interest may now be identified, may now, in fact, be known by police. And this individual here, we don't know if he played a role in it. He was identified just yesterday, again, as another person of interest, but more so as a witness, that the police were interested in speaking with him so that he wouldn't worry about turning himself in and getting arrested. They weren't looking to do that. They were looking to speak to him so he could potentially shed some light on this guy with whom he had an interaction with, however brief, the day before. So right now we are conjecturing, because we don't know in fact, but the Providence police have called a press conference that was supposed to start at 4. Nothing ever starts on time. But we are anxious. And the other part 3 to this, is that the Brown shooter may also be the shooter of the MIT professor that took place 52 miles away from Brown University in Brookline, Massachusetts. So all of these things potentially could be connected, as many people had thought, but was never confirmed. The messaging never went out about that was a potential possibility. Let's go back to CBS News.
Like to say, hey, can you help? Have you seen this person? They've done the best they can with the imagery they have, but they also didn't have an ID. They did not have a name attached to the imagery. So that is a tough place to be. And that's where we continue to be at this point.
All right, we know that the law enforcement is also probably going through hundreds, if not thousands of tips at this point?
Yeah, hundreds of tips flooded in Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, a few hundred tips where they had some kind of a name attached, and that they will look at every single lead and run down every single lead, regardless of whether it seems to come from a credible source or even not, somebody just speculating. They will take a look at it. That's their protocol. FBI is supporting here. The local police have been the lead. They've been the ones at the press conference. The district attorney, very involved. He's also been there. But generally, the FBI, that's their policy. They run down every lead.
Okay, Anna Schechter, thank you. Our thanks to Rodney Harrison as well. We are standing by for a potential news conference in Providence. If and when that happens, we'll of course take you there. Until then, our coverage continues with Elizabeth Cook in another hour of CBS News 24/7.
So there we are, and we are all sort of anxiously awaiting the press conference that was supposed to start at 4 o'clock. But again, in these situations, promptness is not one of the things that you're going to see in a case like this, especially when the police haven't probably slept since the 13th of December. They're working around the clock. They've taken a lot of heat, the police, especially Chief Perez. People have called him incompetent on national television. People have disparaged his department. And no doubt they made some mistakes, but even the best make mistakes, right? And this work is very, very difficult, very painstaking, very exacting, very stressful. And all the people that work on these cases have families at home. And guess what they're doing during these investigations? They're not seeing their families. They're not going home. They're sleeping on some cot in the station house or the detective squad. So for that, we owe a lot of gratitude to these members of the service. That includes the FBI, the police, right? And the state police, the Providence police. And we absolutely appreciate everything that the police do in this case. Mike.
Yeah, you and I have been to hundreds. You're probably twice as many as I have ever been to crime scenes out in the street. Nothing is perfect. There's no perfectly preserved crime scene like you might see on some TV show, okay? You know, CSI Miami or something like that. No, it's out there in the public. It's real. We've had situations where you've got a huge crowd of people and they're encroaching on the crime scene. You got to put your radio car, your RMP over here, garbage cans over here, because you're running out of crime scene tape. You know, it's ridiculous. Sometimes there's a lot of people and you want to talk to a few. When you first get there, you turn your back and they're gone into the wind because they don't want to be seen talking to you. All your witnesses disappear. And this is what happened in the case here in Brown. The kids were not quarantined, and because of the emergency going on, and they went vamoose into the wind. So therefore, nothing is perfect, but like you say, you try to make up for it as best as you can, and you start with 1 foot, like in a bucket, and at a huge disadvantage. You got to make up for that. We can talk about messaging by the police commissioner specifically. I think it would have been better if they had a different person speaking for the department. But the fact is, he knows what he's doing, and to disparage he and his department specifically, just because people are saying it's not going fast enough, I think is wrong, and it's totally detrimental and doesn't get you anywhere. People were complaining about the Moscow, Idaho Police Department, and within a couple of weeks, saying the FBI should take the case, and Kohlberger was caught within 5 weeks. But people are so they want instant gratification, almost like as if it's on TV, where they catch the person within 40 minutes of the crime occurring while you sit in your couch eating your potato chips. No, but it's not going to get you anywhere. It's people who criticize the police department have no idea how a criminal investigation is actually conducted from the inside. So sadly, the men and women of the PD in Providence have taken a huge hit that was totally undeserved.
Absolutely. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. We are sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network, and these are the odds for the Super Bowl. If you're a bettor, you can see those odds. FanDuel, Super Bowl 60. Anyway, folks, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share, comment, and that will help our algorithm. If you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon. with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. You can become part of the Police Off the Cuff family. So to recap, folks, the person of interest, we are all waiting for the police to say, we got him, or we know who he is. We have his name. And the manhunt is on now, but with a named perpetrator. We don't know, in fact, they're going to say that, but that's the information that we have been receiving, that the person of interest, this rotund, large-bellied, waddling individual has been identified. And that's why we are awaiting the press conference, so we can hear that firsthand, hopefully out of the mouth of Chief Perez and not the mayor of of Providence, because, you know, politicians love to stand up and take a bow for doing nothing. This is Julie Grant from Court TV.
Shooting at Brown University remains on the run this morning, and police are now using some new images and piecing together a new timeline. So many connected to the Ivy League University are still reeling, as we know, as these larger questions remain about this shooter's motivation, identity. We know this shooter took the lives of 2 students and wounded 9 others. Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson is on the ground in Rhode Island with the latest.
Police are following up on more than 200 leads as the search for the school shooter intensifies.
It makes me scared to want to go outside in the first place, but I just have errands I know I need to run, but otherwise I really haven't left my apartment.
A major police presence on the campus of Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, following the deadly school shooting. Investigators releasing new enhanced video of a person of interest, a man described approximately 5'8" with a stocky build, who police believe was casing the area up to a week prior. And now investigators asking for the public's help.
We're asking the public to look, if you have any camera systems or any Teslas, like I mentioned, that you look at that footage and that you can reach out to us and please provide us anything that you have. And the reason for that is because on Saturday night, the day of, we actually learned that this individual was in that neighborhood at around 10:30 in the morning.
On Saturday, the gunman walked into the Boris and Holly Engineering building and shot 11 people, killing 2 students, Ella Cook and Muhammad Aziz Amorzokov. 9 others injured. A motive for the shooting is still unknown, or if the shooter had any ties to Brown University. Meanwhile, a memorial on campus for the victims continues to grow.
We understand that as time goes on, there is maybe a natural instinct to assign responsibility for a tragic event like this. Anxiety and fear is very natural, but the shooter is responsible.
There's a $50,000 cash reward leading to an arrest. That's the very latest from Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. Matt Johnson, Court TV.
All right, our thanks to Matt Johnson. Here's a look at the updated timeline of the suspect's potential route. Surveillance video the FBI posted online before it was removed showed a person in dark clothing walking along multiple sidewalks for about an hour, starting shortly after 2 p.m. This is in just a few blocks of the shooting location. This morning, we're wondering, how could a timeline perhaps help catch the Brown University shooting suspect? Let's bring in our guests. I want to welcome in retired NYPD and Nassau County Police Lieutenant Mike Gould and the creator and the host of the show Road Patrol Live, John DePietro. Good morning to you both. John, I'll begin with you. As you were doing excellent reporting over the weekend as this broke, and you've been on the ground there. Tell us a little bit about what you're hearing, any insight coming in about this route and this timeline investigators are trying to create.
Julie, they can't figure out who this guy is. And people need to understand where the building is located. Brown University, it's kind of like a city campus. You have other places like Harvard's kind of like that, BU. But it's the building's right on the fringe of the campus. And people need to understand that. When he exited that building, it's not as if he went over, across the quad where the dorms are. He was then essentially on the city street. Right across from where that building is, it's a regular neighborhood. So it's very unusual. He's walking around and he's looking for cameras. He's very, very cautious. Authorities are hoping to get some kind of video footage where maybe he brought his mask down a little bit. But right now, I mean, they cannot figure out Who is this guy? Why was he walking around for so long? They are hoping to start to extend the circle. So they started right there at ground zero, and then they want to start to move out and maybe get some of his movements. But Julie, what people need to understand was this investigation, to me, it really kicked off on Monday. Saturday, it was total chaos. You had a campus full of students. They had to evacuate the students. They thought he was still around. Are there other victims? So I left there at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were still evacuating people. As of right now, they need a tip from the public for someone to recognize who this individual is.
Yes. Oh, let's hope that happens, John. Thanks. Lieutenant Gould, let me turn to you. From the law enforcement perspective, how do you run this search? How should this be run to capture this guy?
Right. Well, as John said, this is chaotic. Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So law enforcement, let's face it, Providence only had 2 or 3 homicides last this year. So they don't have a great deal of experience with this. They're doing the best they can. As far as no cameras, I understand that this building was on the perimeter of the campus, but still they talked about an old building and a new building, and the old building doesn't have cameras. Whether the building's old or not, it still should be equipped with cameras. As far as apprehending him, I'm certain he is going to be apprehended. I think just based on what we have now is that two-tone jacket. Once they really zone in on that, find out who the manufacturer is, that will certainly be circumstantial evidence when he is arrested. His height, 5'8", guess what? The average height of American men is 5'8", so that's not really. So he's got some kind of unusual. They'll get it together, but I think they were thrown off their feet, and organizing this for a relatively inexperienced police agency is tough.
Right, Lieutenant. We know authorities are asking the public for help. Any footage they may have, if anybody was taking cell phone video, anything. They released some brand new images. We're going to ask everybody to come to your television, take a look.
So you can see their enhanced photos, there's enhanced video footage. And so we're asking the public to ensure that they can see them. They can see here that you want to focus on the body movements, the way the person moved their arms, the body posture, the way they carry their weight. I think those are important movement patterns that may help you identify this individual, which is.
Investigators also shared they provided no indication that they were any closer on IDing him. So we don't know even who this person is. They're asking for the public's patience as well as they work to get that ID.
So obviously this was from before this latest news where we are receiving information that the person of interest which I hate that expression, person of interest, who we've seen in this picture, that they may have a name on this guy now, so that the hunt is on. They may even have him in custody. We don't know yet because the press conference hasn't started. We are all hoping that when the press conference starts, they have some good news here. They have news to tell us that either someone has been arrested or, almost as good, he's been identified, and we have a name to go along with this person. And that would be excellent if that happens, because we all want a positive ending to this. And this person here they put this picture of this person out as another, well, maybe they didn't want to use person of interest. They called him a witness. They're looking to speak to this individual as a witness. Someone just reminded me in the chat, and I knew this, that they also did recover a magazine on the scene or thrown somewhere. I don't know exactly where they recovered from. But from that magazine, they were able to recover DNA. And that may be the source of the DNA that, in fact, has identified the thing I hate, this person of interest. And that may put a name to this rotund body and this masked face and this waddling walk. We may know who this guy is, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, he looks at this point like a lone wolf. We're not sure, or someone who may have had help. I would think he's had at least one person helping him or encouraging him or providing him with logistical information or some sort of support. So if there's two people, then I call it conspiracy. I don't mean it's a conspiracy like a terrorist gang or anything like that, but someone is helping this person to maybe have to do this and also to get away with it. And that makes them a person who's an accessory either before or after the fact. If in fact this person is connected with the shooting up in MIT, that makes it even more interesting. Are there other people in a different state like Massachusetts, where MIT is located, than Rhode Island? Now you're turning it into more of a group. But we don't know all that much yet. But there's definitely, I would say, at least the public should be prepared to hear that there was several other people who've given this person some sort of help before, and maybe now hiding this person, hiding them, help giving them money. Like we saw Luigi, he had several $1,000s in $20 bills that he could just disappear somewhere. And he was thinking about maybe kind of living out in the woods for a while. But we should be prepared that this, what looks like a lone wolf person, may actually be part of a small group that is doing these two hits. We're not sure, but I doubt it's just a single person with no connections to anybody else whatsoever.
Mike, Lula Morocco. Lou, thank you so much for the $10 super sticker. Excuse me. Great insight, Ken and Geary. Lou, good to see you. And again, thank you so much. We've made a lot of good suggestions during this investigation. We've made had a lot of insight into what was going on here. And usually if law enforcement keeps their nose to the grindstone and keeps working the case, even making mistakes, they can still solve these cases with the technology and with, look, video cameras is something that wasn't around for the entire, 20th, 21st century. And now they and cell phones, and of course, DNA, have become the biggest tools for law enforcement now. Every time law enforcement has a case where they have to investigate it, that's the first thing a boss asks: did you do a video canvas? And now, not only do people have Ring cameras on their house, businesses have cameras, and vehicles all have cameras. And then you have license plate readers, red light cameras.
Yes.
You can't go anywhere on this earth without being caught by some camera. So does that make police work easier? You bet it does. How many cases in the past would go unsolved because they didn't have the technology that we have today? And of course, we have to mention, and it may in fact be the way they solved this, investigative genetic genealogy. I don't know that for real. I don't know if that was the way they solved it, but it's a distinct possibility. That's how they solved the Idaho 4 case. Brian Koberger stabbed 4 University of Idaho students to death in their sleep, in their beds. And he left a little bit of DNA on the button of the knife sheath of the K-bar knife that he used to kill these students. And that's how the case was solved. So could it be that this case, the biggest lead, was that he left a magazine behind, and on that magazine was his DNA? I hope it is, because that'll send a signal out to criminals there. But, criminals now are getting more and more sophisticated, wearing gloves, wearing masks, changing their clothing, discarding their clothing, being aware that police can track your cell phone. Geofencing can track your laptop. They can get an electronic signal of every place you are. So there's lots of ways to catch the bad guys, but the bad guys are getting more and more sophisticated, Mike.
Yeah, you just look at this case. If he had, there's at least 40 shots fired, we believe, in the 40s. So you're talking maybe he's got 3 15-round or 16-round magazines to, shoot that 9mm automatic, semi-automatic. You probably have, it's going to be difficult to operate perhaps with gloves, because with the release button and slamming home another magazine, and then pushing the hammer forward. You may have to do that without gloves on, unless you had some sort of special, like say surgical gloves, like a doctor would have. But so that would leave some sort of DNA and maybe a partial fingerprint. So that's good. And then you think about the Madeline Soto case down in Kissimmee, Florida, with Stefan Stearns being caught. How he was caught. Part of it is he became a suspect really quickly because his first version of the events that he gave to the police while he was just a witness and he was not a suspect, they try to match that up with the traffic cameras in the area. And they realized really quickly, after a few hours it took to get all the camera information, but they could not track his car movements the way he said he drove his car to the school where he dropped poor Madeline off. And then then you had an eyewitness. So there was a combination of old school eyewitness seeing something suspicious and modern technology like traffic cameras that could really help, and license plate readers that could really help figure out a direction somebody is coming from, where they're going to, what the time is, what their direction of travel, all that valuable information that helps narrow down the suspect quickly. And also, if you got several suspects, possibly one or two people of interest, it helps narrow it down maybe to one. So all this technology is a great thing for law enforcement.
Mike, I have a lot of questions that I hope will be answered either tonight or tomorrow when we find out more about this investigation. One is, what did the shooter yell at the scene?
Yes.
I want to know that, because I think that goes a long way toward motive. That goes a long way to whether or not this was, in fact, a targeted terrorist attack. And if I find out, and everyone else finds out, that Brown University was hiding this, I think there has to be a price to pay for that if they're hiding certain truths. I want to know what type of gun was used, because it was unclear. One of the witnesses said it was a long gun. That was never pursued. And when reporters asked questions of Chief Perez, he wouldn't answer. He kept that like, oh, that's a part of the investigation. He didn't want to answer that. I want to know a lot of things. That the big question, of course, everyone's asking is, why were there no cameras in that building? When you have 1,200 cameras on campus, why did the building that this perpetrator chose to shoot people in have no cameras? And was that done on purpose? I think it probably was. I think the perpetrator canvassed an area where he knew there were no cameras and that he felt that he could get away with it. And that's disturbing. And that goes against Brown University also. This lackadaisical attitude that universities take, or when they also take political positions against safety and against law enforcement and against the protection of their students and the community, I have great umbrage against that. And I don't think they have a right to take politics above public safety. But we've seen that done in numerous locations across this country. I want to know, was this shooter, did he have any kind of connection at all to Brown University? What was his connection to the professor from MIT? Was there any connection there? And that sort of shows a nexus that he has some kind of problem with higher education or with people in higher education, which could indicate to us that perhaps he was a student or a faculty member, and maybe he was a failure at one or two of those institutes. Or perhaps this is about something more sinister. Maybe it's a hatred. Maybe it is a terrorism. Maybe he targeted a specific person or persons. So I'm hoping all of those questions can be answered. I want to go back to CBS News, who are in Brookline, Massachusetts.
was a typically very safe, quiet neighborhood. We've learned that this professor lived right here in this apartment building on the first floor corner unit. And now CBS News sources have confirmed that police are investigating a possible connection between the mass shooting at Brown University on Saturday and the targeted killing of this MIT professor. We have learned a lot about this MIT professor over the last few days. His name is Nuno Loureiro. He was a physics and engineering professor, and just last May, he got promoted to a very important position, leading one of MIT's largest labs. So this is someone that had a high up leadership position at the university. Again, just last May, getting promoted to that position. We've also been told by neighbors here that he had a family, speaking with parents who have children that went to the same school just down the road here as his children did. We know that he lived in this apartment with his family. So very chilling for this community, of course. But as I mentioned, a lot of people have been hypothesizing that these two could be connected ever since we got out here 3 days ago. So this is a huge update from our CBS News sources. 6 days into this investigation to Brown University, and then this shooting happening just 2 days later, of course, at another Ivy League school. And these information coming in from people familiar with this case and are speaking on the condition of anonymity. So hopefully we will learn more. People have been really wanting answers. This Brown suspect has been out now for several days, no one in custody, no one confirmed to be in custody here in Brookline either. So I think people want that peace of mind, Lisa, of knowing that at least someone has been arrested.
All right, let's bring in CBS News Crime and Public Safety Senior Coordinating Producer Anna Schechter. Anna, thank you so much for being with us. What more can you tell us about this possible connection between the shooting at Brown University and this murder of an MIT professor?
Well, we know that law enforcement are looking at a potential connection. And now this is new because early indications from our law enforcement sources after that assassination of the MIT professor at his home Monday night, early indications where there was no connection. And that's what we learned from our law enforcement sources. That has changed today, that they are looking at a possible connection. But as I've said earlier, they have had leads on the Brown University shooter who shot and killed 2 students and injured 9 others. They've had leads before. We're now on day 6. This is another lead that they are working on. So let's see where this leads us, because Sunday they had a person of interest in custody who they were questioning, turned out not to be the right person. Then they released more images on Tuesday of both the person of interest and another person who authorities said was in proximity to that person of interest. And they're asking for help to find and talk to that individual, which is a little bit strange. Now we're on day 6 and police have continued to gather up surveillance imagery that comes from a variety of sources. That's surveillance cameras, ring cams, business cams, license plate readers, law enforcement cameras. They are looking at whether or not there is a connection. That's all we can report at this time. And we'll see if that lead pans out. But that's where we're at right now. And obviously the community in both Providence, Rhode Island, which was rocked by this horrific shooting. Now so many students have left, but the residents are still there, feeling very uneasy that the shooter has not been apprehended. And then of course, also in the Brookline, Massachusetts community, where the professor lived, he has neighbors. He was living in a multi-family unit, and our sources told us that he answered the door and was shot 3 times. The assailant fled without a trace. So also a challenging investigative environment. There have been lots of rumors swirling about whether or not there is a connection to a foreign government who might be behind this. Right now, our U.S. intel sources say there's no indication of that at this time. But as I said, law enforcement is looking at a possible connection between the two that happened just a little bit more than 48 hours apart and just about 50 miles away from one another.
Anna, a CBS News source says it's the lack of usable surveillance video that's making the search for the suspect or suspects very difficult. What can authorities do now to narrow that search if they don't have that critical surveillance footage?
Well, we know what they can do, and apparently they've done it because apparently there could be, or there is, people are saying in the chat that they've named the perp. I don't know if the name is out there in the public yet, but some news organizations are saying that the perp has been ID'd, including CBS said it at the top of the hour, said that they have an ID, but they have yet to show up at the press conference, which we were waiting for, was supposed to take place at 4:00. But we know that there's a lot of information out there that they have yet to share. And as I watch the the press conference that has yet to start, there's folks standing by. Let me play one of the scenes of someone at the actual press conference that is awaiting the officials to step on the dais and provide them with hopefully some fresh information. There's a local station. I thought she was about to talk, perhaps not. Maybe she's just practicing her faces. I don't know.
Overdue in the Boston area. Now, Brian and I are also hearing about
2 days now. Arlita Pappas has been here, since the inception of everything. And we've been kind of covering the basis of what these questions look like for the community and concerned parents. I kind of want to know what development happened over the last couple hours that gave this background for this warrant, for now this activity in Massachusetts to just happen. This happened over the last several hours. So what were those puzzle pieces, like Ted just mentioned, that led investigators to this area? And now, there's a lot that needs to be answered here, whether it comes to background, what the FBI's steps were. I know during yesterday's press conference, the FBI did say that, they're deploying all of their resources and that every field office across the United States was informed about how this is a high priority case. And one thing that they did mention too, that I do want to bring up, is that all of their resources were expedited. So you can only imagine the work that's happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of chatter in this room, but outside of these doors and in a location that we still don't know or can confirm yet, there are officials combing through evidence, trying to get answers. We are now on day 6 of this manhunt. 2 students were killed. 9 students were injured. Ella Cook, Mohammed Aziz, those were the students that unfortunately lost their lives in this case. 2 families now grieving the loss of their loved ones and preparing for unexpected goodbyes. There's a lot of questions surrounding whether, the person they're looking for and the person they want to question either know each other. Is there a connection there? Now that we're learning about this connection between these 2 shootings, what exactly was that puzzle piece that led to this warrant? We spoke to Bob, just a little moments ago, just about what really goes into a warrant and how much extensive information and evidence you need to obtain in order to serve that warrant. So what exactly led officials to this step, another step in what has been days-long investigating, days-long gathering evidence, whether it's physical DNA evidence, phone data from the FBI, whatever the case may be, even surveillance footage that was handed over by the university. What exactly led officials to make this decision and say, no, we have a warrant and we're going and we're going to this location? What exactly spearheaded this move here? There's a lot of questions on the table, Mark, Rachel, that need to be addressed once officials stand in front of that podium here.
And we are all waiting, anxiously awaiting this information. But what we're getting is that he has been ID'd, but the information has not been put out there yet, Mike. And that could make a lot of sense because they're probably executing search warrants right now, Mike. And that could be the reason they're not putting his name out there. Or, he knows the police are looking for him, as he's seen video, he's seen his still photos of him all over the place. So his name, the police know his name, but they're probably executing search warrants and all kinds of other legal things is going on, but they haven't yet released his name, Mike.
Yeah, as Chief Harrison said a little while ago, because he was in charge of the Rex Heuermann investigation that was successful in the Gildergo Beach killings. They may have a lot more information and maybe a lot more really good video that they didn't want to release to the public because that would tip off the perpetrator that the police were more close on his tail than he may have suspected. You don't want to ever tip them off. And then they go underground or they'd hide even more than they would, thinking that they were safe. But you're trying to do this as quickly, but also as carefully as you can, and not show your cards completely to the public and let them know everything that you tactically, not let them know everything that you know. And this guy has had the devil's luck. He picks a place, a hall. Maybe he knew, or maybe he didn't know, and he just lucked out that there was very few cameras. And some of these perps, you've done this before, Phil, I've done this. They just seem to have the devil's luck, and they just avoid your grasp, on a couple of occasions, and it takes a while to catch up to them. This guy's got the devil's luck on his side right now, but it seems to be running out at this point.
Mike, I love some of your old-fashioned expressions. They come from they come from another era. And when I hear these old-fashioned expressions, I realize I'm older than you. So you make me feel even older. But,
I feel young compared to you. Thank you.
we're really, I see all the microphones are set up, so they must be ready to come, but they're taking their time, and hopefully they'll do a good presentation. Folks that are just tuning in now, the person of interest apparently has been identified by name. There's a distinct possibility that the police are out on the hunt or executing search warrants or are going to apprehend him, or maybe they even have him apprehended. We don't know that yet. We're anxiously awaiting the press conference, but so far there's about 15 microphones set up on a lectern, but no one standing behind those microphones. Mike, so much criticism has been made of the Providence Police Department, of the way that this investigation has been carried out since the 13th of December, exacerbated by a lot of public officials that had no answers and didn't look good. And we criticized not the police work, but we criticized the messaging. And actually, some of the police work we criticized also. We criticized that they allowed the students to leave without detaining them. They let witnesses go. They didn't really secure that crime scene. They didn't know how many students were in the study hall. It's a lecture hall, but they were using it for a study presentation. So there's a lot of things. They didn't do a proper canvass. They got the wrong guy, which could happen to any police department, any investigative. But it also, with people that aren't in the know, it gives sort of a black eye. Oh, they got the wrong guy. Yeah, that set back the investigation for a couple of days. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, people use the term Keystone Cops and they use it derisively. And, we've been there. We've had, we've said crime scenes that just go awry, that are really not controlled, that, are a mess. And that does happen. But it's, as you say, how do you recover from that? How quickly can you recover? And once you get your feet under you, how do you move forward? In this case, yeah, you had the Providence Police and the Brown University Security Force. Is that security force made up of retired law enforcement who may already have a really good, background and experience on their side, or is it made up of part-time guys with a square badge working for some company that they work there for a couple of weeks or a couple of months and they come and go, and you don't even know, they don't have any real training or experience outside the minimum required to get a security certificate. You got to deal with that reality, is that they would be there in mass, or however many you have, and that's their, that is their campus. What is their status? Are they considered state police officers? Do they have arrest powers? What's their training? Does the Providence Police Department get along with them? Do they have a friendly workable relationship or they're enemies of each other. We've seen this in New York City. It can really be detrimental when you, as a police officer, have to go onto that property as fast as you possibly can. And in this kind of case, where you have 9 people shot, 2 people dead, you'd want the Brown University police force to stand down and work perimeter and help you, but not get in your way. Let the more experienced Providence police come in and do the job that they would do it the way that they would want to do it according to their own protocol. So yeah, it was a cluster freak in the beginning. And I think the police have done a tremendous job since then. But again, it's the messaging that got in the way of a lot of the effectiveness of the police and really tainted the public's perception of the police department unfairly.
Absolutely. Pauline Buckles from the chat. If I were those Brown students, I would demand a refund and not return after break.
Yeah.
I think Brown University is about $70,000 or $80,000 a year. You know, I know Columbia University, which is another Ivy League school in New York City, is $100,000 a year. That's what I hear. I don't have any first knowledge. I mean, I just can't imagine how you could have paid that, you know, and what in an education is worth $100,000 a year. I just, it's out of control. That is out of control. Because when you think of it, it comes back to all of us, to taxpayers, because someone's getting that money and some people are paying it, but most people get some kind of financial aid or some kind of scholarship, because who could afford
That's right.
to pay $100,000 a year to attend an Ivy League school in the case of Columbia? And I think what I heard, and I don't know if it's absolutely in stone, is Brown charges about $70,000 a year. That's no picnic either. If you're a parent and you have to pay that, it's quite expensive. So what we're talking about here today is apparently the person of interest who we've seen over the last few days as this individual you see up on the screen. Apparently they have a name to this guy, and they're probably out right now doing police work in connection with, what do I mean by police work? Well, search warrants, and perhaps they haven't apprehended him yet. That's a good possibility too. We're all taking for granted that he's been apprehended, but I don't know that. I don't know that whether he's been apprehended or not. And hopefully we're gonna find out once this press conference starts. But in essence, it has not started yet, and we are waiting. And if the police are working on something right now, live, that they'll take their time. They'll take their time. So I don't know specifically when this press conference is going to start, but we could just recap some of the things we were talking about. And CBS News was giving a very good report. And for those that tuned in just recently, they are saying that the MIT professor who was shot and killed is now connected to the Brown shooter, to the Brown University shooter. So that is relatively new information. Many people put that together, but now they're saying it's potentially the truth. This is CBS News.
So what law enforcement needs to do is they need to track a path of flight of that assailant. So let's look at Brown University. You had this engineering building that in the location that the shooting occurred, it was not outfitted with the state-of-the-art HD cameras that can capture every angle. Some of these new cameras are actually constantly rotating around, capturing really, really in high definition what's going on. You did not have that in this case. In fact, there is no video evidence of the suspect pulling the trigger, according to authorities, just the chaos and the aftermath. So that's a challenge for law enforcement. The only imagery available that they have of that person of interest was taken outside of that building. Once the person of interest crossed the street and is walking down that sidewalk where there are some residential homes, there just across from that engineering building. By day 2, that is the most that they had of him. That is the only path of flight that they had tracked. Even now that they are looking at a possible connection between these two incidents, they don't have a full path where they can actually track exactly when the assailant in the Brown University shooting might have gotten into a vehicle and driven, and where this individual went, potentially going to Brookline, Massachusetts. They don't even have that. They are just still looking at this possibility based on the evidence that they have collected, and that evidence that they are heavily leaning on is surveillance video footage. Some of the imagery is probably going to be better outside of that Brown University area. What we saw, what the police released to the public, is grainy. It's really hard to go on. It's impossible to tell who it is. And police were not, as of yesterday at the press conference, able to identify who the person of interest is in that imagery, or who the other person who may have been in the proximity of the person of interest that they also want to talk to is. They don't have those name IDs.
And Anna, we're on several days into this investigation. What do you think has been the biggest roadblock, or maybe the biggest challenge for law enforcement? Is it the lack of surveillance footage? Is it falsely identifying a suspect early on that slowed them down? What do you think is really the issue here? Maybe it's a few issues.
It's a few issues. What you just mentioned, both of those things contribute. The fact that it wasn't like a normal class day, you had a study group, so it's not like they had an exact roster of every single person who clocked into a class. It was a study group preparing for a final exam. But let me tell you, the lack of high quality surveillance video, to me, is the number one roadblock that hindered this investigation from the beginning. The fact that they wasted those hours on that initial person of interest and publicized that they had a person of interest in custody, yes, that slowed them down. But if they had excellent surveillance video that allowed them to track the path of flight, they could have caught up. But remember with the Luigi Mangione case, it took them 5 days. And this is the NYPD we're talking about. This is the best equipped police department in the country and possibly the world. And once the alleged assailant, Luigi Mangione, had left, it was really difficult. And it was up to Good Samaritans, and thanks to those images that were pretty high quality that NYPD was able to put out. Remember the rear view mirror cam in the cab? That was the clearest image that we had of him, because facial recognition software did not work given the angles on the face, the fact that in a lot of those images he was wearing a mask. But it was luck that those people in that McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, saw something, thought it was suspicious. His eyebrows were distinct, and they went to that manager, and she picked up the phone. Even if she didn't sound on that 911 call, as we heard that she believed it to be credible, she still placed that call. The police did not think that when they walked into that McDonald's, they were going to get that suspect. But as soon as they saw him, their instinct kicked in that, yes, they had the suspect. So in this case, we're now 6 days out. Let's see what happens. We're expecting a press conference this evening. If today goes as the last few days have gone, where you have the mayor, the district attorney, and the police chief speaking to the public about where they're at, I'll just remind you, so far at these press conferences, what we've learned is they've had very, very little to go on.
Yeah. All right. Anna Schechter, thank you so much.
So much information, so much evidence to go through. The media, excuse me, the media is always criticizing the police, but in a major investigation, 5 or 6 days is not the end of the world. And Mike, you worked the Koberger case with me through the very beginning. And that took 6 weeks to arrest the perpetrator who murdered 4 students at the University of Idaho off campus in Moscow, Idaho. and everyone was saying, "Oh, is this a cold case?" Remember that, Mike? They were saying, "Is this a cold case? Should this case be given to the FBI? Should it be taken away from the Moscow police?" All of those things were being spoken about, and we were just like, "That's crazy. It's not that long. This is a complicated investigation, just as this one is." But the big problem with this investigation was that the messaging was so bad. They did not do a good job with the messaging. And that was the biggest problem here. And I think if they would have done a good job with the messaging, many people would have backed off a little bit and said, look, they're working as hard as they can. This happens. Grabbing the wrong guy happens. It's happened to me and the NYPD when I was on the NYPD. So you can't just say, oh, I say it all the time. Investigation is equal parts art and equal parts science. And when they mesh together perfectly, that's when you get great results. When they don't, you can make mistakes. Absolutely. Mike.
Yeah, I think, within like 36 hours, they had a person of interest in custody. And a lot of the media, unfortunately, a lot of the narrative is driven by the media and the public reacts to it rather than the other way around, where the public is disenchanted with the law enforcement and the media then follows up. A lot of the narrative is driven by the media that puts, people out there criticizing, say, the law enforcement or the messaging, or saying that we need the FBI to take over this case, even though it's a local law enforcement homicide. It needs to be taken over by the FBI. What does the local police know? That is unfortunately a sign of the times that we're in. That's the 24-hour, 7 days a week news cycle that you have on the regular stations, but then you also have content creators on YouTube and other platforms, sometimes saying the same thing. And that gives the public, they hear about the high profile cases where they're solved fairly quickly, and they get disenfranchised rather quickly because they're like, well, wait a minute, how come this one isn't solved? This is an easy case because the guy walked in, shot up the place. Obviously, he walks away. How come we don't know where he went? He didn't disappear. He had to go somewhere. Follow him. And they see, CSI Miami and all these other shows, and they just believe that's going to happen within 24 hours. And so that's wrong. Having that person listed as a person of interest, the public was like, okay, we're done. And when it turns out that it wasn't, they're like, oh, you guys are the Keystone Cops. You don't know your butt from your elbow. And that puts things back, and it lowers the expectations, and it lowers people's belief in the effectiveness of law enforcement, when really that's not the case. And people then get very critical of areas of law enforcement that they really are only knowledgeable about through media and not through experience. And therefore, there's a high level of dissatisfaction based not on some, good, solid information, but really based on misinformation.
100%. And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style. FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season is here. The only question is, are you ready to play? You must be 21 years or older and present in select states for Kansas and affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC, Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expires 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbookfanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE New York, or text HOPE New York in New York. You know, folks, we were told that the press conference was going to happen at 4:00, and I think it's clear that there's probably some police activity going on, and they will hold that press conference for as long as they need to, and we're not going to continue to sit and wait for the press conference because it could happen in the next 10 minutes or could happen in the next 4 hours. So what I can tell you is that Mike and I will follow up tomorrow and on this, because there's definitely some new information coming out, and hopefully by tomorrow, this person of interest who has been called for this whole investigation, this person will be in handcuffs and under arrest. But until then, we're going to just thank everyone for tuning in. We just jumped on the air as soon as we heard that a press conference was imminent. Mike, your final thoughts.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there with us. We're as eager to find out what we can about this person. We believe that this person is involved in both of those shootings, and therefore that would be great if that person be taken off the street. It'll happen quick, and don't listen to some of the crazy stuff that's out there. Listen to Police Off the Cuff.
100%. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.